I cannot remember now when the priest first spoke of Jerusalem. It must have been spring, because the fields were green and my hands were black with earth. But I remember his voice breaking when he said the Holy Sepulchre lay in the hands of infidels, that Christ's tomb was defiled, that the pilgrims were slaughtered on the roads like animals. He wept. I had never seen a priest weep before. He said the Turks cut the throats of Christian babies and fed them to dogs. He said they burned churches with the faithful still inside. He said Jerusalem itself cried out for deliverance. And then he said the words that pierced my heart like a blade. All who took up the cross would have their sins forgiven. All of them. Every one. From birth until the moment they set foot in the holy city. I had killed a man 2 winters before. Not in war, not in defense, in rage. He was my neighbor, Thomas, and he had accused me of moving the boundary stones between our fields. He said I was a thief. We argued and I struck him, and he fell, and his head hit a rock and he did not rise again. His wife found him there in the mud, his skull cracked open like an egg. No one knew it was me. They thought he had fallen drunk, and Thomas was known to drink. But I knew. God knew. Every night since then I had lain awake seeing his face, seeing the surprise in his eyes when I pushed him, seeing the dark pool spreading beneath his head. Every Sunday I took the Eucharist and felt it burn in my mouth like coals. I was damned. I knew I was damned. Hell waited for me with my name already written in its book. When the priest spoke of forgiveness, of sins washed away, I felt something break open inside my chest. Here was my salvation. Here was the only path God would give me. I would walk to Jerusalem and I would be clean. I would be forgiven. I would escape the flames that waited for me. My wife held my arm when I told her I would go. She said nothing. Her fingers pressed into my flesh through the cloth and I felt the thin bones of her hand. We had buried 2 children already, one to fever, one to a birth that went gone wrong. The living one, the boy, watched me from the corner with eyes that seemed to know something I did not. Eyes that looked like Thomas's in that last moment. I told her what the priest had promised, every lie I had told, every time I had lain with her in anger instead of love, every dark thought, all of it washed away. I did not tell her about Thomas. I could not speak his name aloud. She asked what would become of them if I did not return. I said God would provide. I believed this then. I had to believe it. The alternative was hell, and I would do anything. Abandon my family, walk to the end of the earth, die in a foreign land. Anything to escape those flames. We left after harvest. There were more of us than I had imagined. Thousands, they said, though I could not count so high. Men from our village, yes, but also from villages I had never heard named, and lords on horses with their knights in mail that shone like water, and monks who sang as they walked, and women too, and children, some barely old enough to walk themselves, and carts piled with grain and iron and wood, and pigs and chickens driven before us like we were Noah loading the ark. An army of God, the priest called it. We were the sword of Christ raised against the enemies of heaven. Pope Urban himself had commanded it, they said. The Holy Father in Rome had looked upon the suffering of Christendom and called us to arms. I walked beside a man named Gerald who had a withered leg and said he would be healed when we reached Jerusalem. The priests had promised it. The lame would walk, the blind would see, the sick would be made whole in that holy place. I walked beside a woman named Agnes who carried a baby that never cried, never made a sound. I walked beside boys younger than my son, their faces still smooth, carrying their father's old swords that dragged in the dirt. The walking itself became everything. At first we sang hymns and the priests led prayers at dawn and at dusk. We sang of Jerusalem the golden, of the new Jerusalem coming down from heaven, of the day when all tears would be wiped away. But after weeks the singing grew thinner. My feet bled inside my shoes, and the blood dried and then bled again. The leather rotted from sweat and rain. Gerald's withered leg began to swell, turning purple and black, and the smell of it was like spoiled meat. He fell behind and I did not see him after that. I heard later that he died in a ditch somewhere in Germany, calling out for his mother. Agnes's baby died before we reached Hungary. It had been dead for days, I think, but she would not let anyone take it from her arms. She held it and rocked it and sang to it, and the smell grew worse and worse until finally some of the men held her down, while others pried the tiny corpse from her grip. She fought them like a demon. When they finally took it, she walked away from the camp that night and into a river. They found her body downstream, caught in the roots of a tree, her skirts billowing around her like she was still trying to float. Some said she would be damned for it, that self-murder was the worst sin. Some said she was already in heaven because she had taken the cross and God would understand her grief. We reached a city, Cologne they called it. The walls were stone and higher than any church I had ever seen. We camped outside and waited. I do not know what we waited for. Food perhaps, permission to pass. The Lord spoke to other lords and we sat in the mud and ate what we had, which was less each day. A man traded his cloak for bread, another man stole the bread and they fought with knives, and one of them died, blood pouring from his neck while he made a wet gurgling sound. The priests said it was the devil testing us. They said we must be strong. They said Jerusalem was close. But it was not close. We had not even left Christian lands. Hunger makes the mind strange. I began to see things that were not there. My wife standing at the edge of the camp reaching for me, her mouth open but no sound coming out. My son running between the tents, laughing, always just beyond my reach. I would call out and they would vanish like smoke. Others saw things too. A whole group of men claimed they saw Christ himself walking among us, his wounds still bleeding, pointing east toward Jerusalem. Some said angels walked among us at night, their feet not touching the ground. Some said they saw the Virgin in the clouds, weeping tears that fell as rain. A knight claimed St. George had appeared to him on a white horse and told him we would be victorious, that not one of us would fall if we kept faith. 3 days later that same knight was killed by bandits on the road. We crossed through Hungary and the people there hated us. They called us locusts. We took food from their fields because we had none. We took it and they tried to stop us and men died. Theirs and ours. A village refused to give us grain and some of the lords burned it. I watched it burn. I watched people run from the flames and I did nothing. I told myself they should have helped us. We were God's army. We were marching to save Christendom. Why would they not help us? In a town whose name I never learned, some of the men found Jews living there. I do not know who started it. Someone said the Jews had killed Christ. Someone else said they poisoned wells. The priests tried to stop it but the mob was too large and too hungry and too angry. I saw them drag families from their houses. I saw them beat an old man with clubs until his head split open like a melon. I saw them throw children into a burning building. The screaming was like nothing I had ever heard. It went on until finally it stopped. I did not kill anyone that day. I stood and watched. I told myself I had not participated. But I did nothing to stop it either. That night the priest from my village, the one who had first spoken of Jerusalem, he would not look at any of us. He said Mass the next morning but his hands shook so badly he spilled the wine. We crossed the sea from Italy. I had never seen so much water. It moved like something alive, rising and falling, and I was sick until there was nothing left in me to bring up. And then I was sick with dry heaves that made my ribs feel like they would crack. Men died on the ships, their bodies gone gray and cold. Their bodies were thrown over the side and I watched them sink into the blue, turning and turning as they fell into the depths. I wondered if their souls could still reach heaven from the bottom of the sea, if God could find them down there in the dark. No one knew. The priests said yes, of course, God sees all. But they did not sound certain anymore. The land on the other side was not like home. We landed near Constantinople and I saw a city greater than anything I had imagined possible. Walls upon walls, churches with golden domes, buildings that reached toward heaven. The emperor lived there. Alexius, they called him. He was supposed to be our ally, another Christian. But he looked at us like we were wild beasts that might turn on him. His soldiers watched us with their hands on their swords. We camped outside the city and they brought us food but would not let us inside. Some of our knights met with the emperor and came back angry. They said he wanted us to swear oaths to him. They said he was a coward who would not fight his own battles. We crossed into the land of the Turks. The sun was hotter here and the dust was finer, and it got into everything. Your mouth, your eyes, your clothes. The people who lived there dressed strangely and spoke words I could not understand. Some of them were Christians, they said. They wore crosses but they prayed differently, and their priests had beards and married wives. Our priests said they were heretics, barely better than the Turks themselves. But they gave us food, so we took it. And when they had no more food to give, some of us took it anyway. We marched through that land for months. Or perhaps it was only weeks. Time became difficult. Days bled into each other. There was only walking and stopping and walking again. We passed through cities that opened their gates to us and cities that closed them. We came to Nicaea and besieged it. The walls were thick and high and the Turks inside shot arrows down at us. I saw a man take an arrow through the eye. I saw another split open from throat to belly by a thrown spear. The city finally surrendered to the emperor's forces and we moved on, hungry and angry that we got no plunder. Then we fought the Turks in the open field at a place called Dorylaeum. I had never been in battle before. Nothing prepares you for it. The sound is like the world ending. Men screaming, horses screaming, metal on metal. The wet sound of blades cutting flesh. The Turkish horsemen came at us like the wind, shooting arrows, wheeling away before we could close with them. Our knights charged and came back bloodied. Men fell all around me. I swung my spear at shadows. I tripped over bodies. I pissed myself and did not realize it until later. We won, they said. The Turks retreated and we held the field. But so many were dead. The bodies were piled like cordwood. We stripped them, Turks and Christians both, taking their clothes, their weapons, their boots. I took a dagger from a dead Turk. His throat was cut and his eyes were still open, staring at nothing. I tried to close them but they would not stay closed. We marched south through heat that made the air shimmer and dance. Men collapsed and did not rise. We left them where they lay because we could not carry them. I saw a man go mad from the sun, tearing off his clothes and running into the wilderness screaming that demons were chasing him. I saw horses die and we ate them, cutting the meat from their flanks while their bodies still twitched. We came to Antioch in the autumn, a great city, ancient with walls that ran up the side of a mountain. We besieged it and winter came and men died of cold and hunger and sickness. The walls were too strong and we could not break them. We camped in the mud and the rain and ate anything we could find. I saw men eat grass like cattle. I saw them eat leather, boiling it until it was soft enough to chew. I saw them dig up graves and eat the corpses of Turks we had killed months before. I ate things I will not name. I ate things I cannot speak of without vomiting. The priests said we suffered because we had sinned. They said we must purify ourselves. They said the whores must be driven from the camp. They said any man who lay with a woman out of wedlock would be cast out. Some men whipped their own backs until the blood ran down their legs. Some gave away everything they had, even their shoes. Some swore they would never lie with a woman again, even their wives, if God would only let them live to see Jerusalem. I do not know what I did to purify myself. I prayed. I tried to pray. But the words felt hollow in my mouth, like speaking to an empty room. Men began to desert. They slipped away in the night, heading back north, back toward home. Some were caught and hanged. Their bodies twisted on ropes and the Lord said let them hang as a warning. But still men left. The army that had numbered in the tens of thousands was shrinking. We ate our horses. We ate our mules. We ate the rats that came to eat our dead. Then God sent us a miracle. A priest named Peter had a vision. He said the holy lance, the very spear that had pierced Christ's side, was buried in the church of St. Peter inside Antioch. He said an angel had told him where to dig. Some believed him. Some said he was mad with hunger. But we had nothing else to believe in. We needed to get inside the city. A Turkish guard was bribed, or so they said. In the night he opened a small gate and some of our knights climbed in. By dawn we were pouring through the gates. I do not remember deciding to run. I only remember running. My spear in my hand, my heart beating so hard I thought it would burst. There were people in the streets, soldiers yes, but others too. Old men, women, children. They ran from us. We caught them. I saw a woman dragged from her house by her hair. I saw knights on horseback riding down people who fled, cutting them down from behind. I saw a child no older than my son standing in a doorway screaming for his mother. A man beside me drove his sword through the child's chest. The child looked surprised. That is what I remember most. The look of surprise. I killed a man that day. He came at me with a club and I stuck my spear in his belly without thinking. He fell and grabbed the shaft of the spear and tried to pull it out, and his hands were slipping on his own blood. I put my foot on his chest and pulled and the spear came free and his insides came with it. He died looking up at me. I do not know if he was a soldier or just a man defending his home. His eyes. They looked like Thomas's eyes. The same surprise. The same question. Why? I thought, this is my penance. This is what I must do to be forgiven. I thought killing in God's name would erase the killing I had done in rage. But the two deaths felt the same weight, the same stain. The blood ran in the streets. It pooled in the low places. We went from house to house taking everything: food, gold, cloth, anything of value. We found cellars full of grain. We found jars of oil and wine. We ate until we were sick. Some men raped the women they found. I heard it happening in the houses around me. The priests walked through the streets saying this was God's will, that these were his enemies, that we were his instrument of justice. They dug in the church where Peter had said to dig. For hours they found nothing, and I saw doubt on every face. Then they found it. A spearhead, old and rusted. Peter held it up and wept. Some said it was the holy lance. Some said Peter had buried it there himself days before. I do not know. I saw men fall to their knees at the sight of it. I saw them weep and pray and touch the rust-stained metal like it was Christ himself. I wanted to believe. God, how I wanted to believe. But we had no time to rest. A Turkish army came to recapture the city, tens of thousands of them, led by a great lord named Kerboga. Now we were the ones besieged, trapped inside the walls with the bodies of those we had killed rotting in the streets. The smell was beyond anything I can describe. It filled your nose and mouth and lungs. You could taste it. We were starving again. All the food we had found was gone in weeks. Men began to eat the bodies of the Turks. They cut the flesh from the corpses and roasted it and ate it. I saw this. I saw Christian men eating the flesh of the dead. The priests said it was a sin, but they did not stop it. How could they? We were all dying. Then we sallied forth. We had the holy lance, and the priests said God would protect us. We marched out of the gates, thousands of starving men, to fight an army that outnumbered us. I thought I would die. I wanted to die. Death seemed easier than one more day of hunger and fear. But we won. The Turks broke and fled. Some said it was the holy lance. Some said they saw saints fighting beside us. Saint George on his white horse, Saint Demetrius with his sword of fire. I do not know what I saw. I was half mad with hunger and terror. I know we killed Turks by the hundreds. I know we chased them across the fields and cut them down as they ran. I know I laughed while I did it. I laughed until I was crying. After Antioch we rested. Winter passed into spring and we buried our dead. So many dead. And we marched south. Jerusalem, the priest said. Jerusalem was close now. But it was not close. We walked through lands of heat and dust. We walked through places where nothing grew, where the sun beat down like the wrath of God himself. Men fell and did not rise. We left them where they lay. There were too many to bury. The road behind us was marked with bodies and bones. We came to a city called Ma'ara. It resisted us. We took it by storm, and the slaughter was terrible. Worse than Antioch. Worse than anything. I saw men break into houses and kill everyone inside. I saw them throw babies from the walls. And then, God forgive me, I saw them eat the dead. Not from hunger alone, though we were hungry. From rage. From some darkness that had grown in us. They roasted the bodies of the Turks and ate them. I saw it. I will carry that sight into hell with me. I did not eat human flesh. I swear this before God. But I stood by while others did. What is the difference? What is the difference between the man who kills and the man who watches? We marched on. The months became a blur. We took cities and castles, we killed and we ate, and we moved south, always south toward Jerusalem. Some of our lords broke away to claim lands for themselves. Antioch, Edessa, other places. They had come for gold and power, and they found it. But most of us kept walking. We had come too far to stop. We had sacrificed too much. Jerusalem was all that mattered now. We lost more men every day, not to battles but to sickness, to heat, to despair. Men simply gave up. They sat down by the side of the road and waited to die. I thought about doing the same. But something in me kept walking. Fear of hell, maybe. Or fear that if I stopped, everything I had done would be meaningless. We reached Jerusalem in June. The heat was like walking through fire. I saw the walls from a distance, golden in the sun, and I fell to my knees without meaning to. Jerusalem. The word itself seemed holy. Men were weeping and praying and singing, and I heard myself making sounds that might have been prayer or might have been something else. The city was held by the Fatimids, Saracens from Egypt. They had taken it from the Turks just the year before. They saw us coming and they drove all the Christians out of the city. We watched them leave, men and women and children, our fellow faithful, thrown out into the desert with nothing. Some joined us. Some begged for food we did not have. Some died in the heat before they could reach our camp. We besieged the city. We had no food. We had little water. The nearest water was miles away, and the Saracens attacked anyone who went to get it. Men died of thirst with Jerusalem in sight. They died calling out for water, their tongues swollen and black. We built siege towers of wood. The Saracens threw down Greek fire, a substance that burned even in water. And men burned alive in the towers, screaming, their flesh melting from their bones. I heard them screaming at night when I tried to sleep. I hear them still. We circled the city in a great procession, barefoot, carrying crosses and relics. The priests said if we showed true faith the walls would fall like Jericho. We walked and prayed and sang, and the Saracens stood on the walls and laughed at us. The walls did not fall. A fleet arrived from Italy with food and water and wood for more siege engines. We built more towers. We built battering rams. We dragged them to the walls while arrows and stones fell on us like rain. Men died by the dozens. But we kept building. We kept pushing forward. The priests said this was the final test. They said Satan himself was defending the city. They said if we faltered now we would lose everything. Our souls would be forfeit. We would burn in hell forever. After 5 weeks we breached the walls. A siege tower reached the ramparts and knights poured across. The gates were opened from inside. We poured in like the sea, like a flood that drowns everything. I do not know what I expected to find. Streets of gold perhaps, angels singing, something holy. But there were only buildings and people running and screaming and dying. We killed them. All of them. The priests said to kill them all. They said God would know his own. The Saracens fought back at first, but there were too many of us. We swept through the streets like wildfire. I saw men cut down where they stood. I saw women clutching their children, both killed with the same stroke. I saw old men praying to their God as swords came down on their heads. I killed a boy. He came at me with a stone and I drove my spear through his chest. He could not have been more than 12. His eyes went wide and he grabbed the spear shaft and tried to say something, but only blood came out. I pulled the spear free and he fell, and I stepped over him and kept walking. Thomas had a son, about that age. I had seen him at his father's grave, standing there with his mother, both of them weeping. And now I had killed another woman's son, another boy who would not grow to be a man. Was this God's justice? Was this my penance? Or was I simply damned, doing the devil's work while thinking it was God's? The slaughter went on for 2 days. Maybe 3. Time stopped having meaning. We went from house to house, from street to street. Anyone who was not Christian died. Jews died. Saracens died. Even Christians who looked like Saracens died because we could not tell them apart. The blood ran so deep in some streets that it reached my ankles. I waded through it. The smell was beyond anything. Bodies lay everywhere, piled in heaps, rotting in the sun. Dogs came and ate them. We let them. On the Temple Mount the slaughter was worst. Thousands had taken refuge there. We killed them all. I saw knights ride their horses through blood so deep the animals screamed in terror. I saw men hacking at bodies long after they were dead, as if they could not stop, as if something had broken inside them. And then it was over. The city was ours. We went to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre and we prayed. We prayed covered in blood, stinking of death, and the priests said we were saved. They said our sins were forgiven. They said we had done God's work. They said this was the holiest day in 1,000 years. I knelt in that church and I waited to feel something. Peace, perhaps. Joy. The presence of God. I waited to feel the weight lift from my shoulders, to feel clean, to feel forgiven. But I felt nothing. Only a great emptiness. like a field after locusts have passed through, like a house where everyone has died. I looked at my hands and they were red, and I could not remember all the things they had done. I tried to pray and the words would not come. My lips moved but no sound came out. Around me men were weeping with joy. They were kissing the stones where Christ had walked. They were embracing each other and praising God. But I felt nothing. I wondered if I had lost my soul somewhere along the road. I wondered if God could see me at all anymore, or if I had become invisible to heaven. We spent days clearing the bodies from the city. We dragged them outside the walls and burned them. The smoke rose for days, thick and black, blotting out the sun. The smell was in everything. We washed the blood from the streets, but you could still see it in the cracks between the stones. Some men stayed in Jerusalem. They became lords of the new kingdom, rulers of the land we had taken. They divided the spoils and built castles and acted like they had always been nobles. Most of us began the long walk back. There were so few of us now. So many fewer. Of the thousands who had left my village and the villages around it, only a handful remained. Most were bones scattered across 2,000 miles of road. I walked beside a knight who had lost his horse and his sword and his mind. He talked to people who were not there. His wife, his children, his father who had been dead 20 years. I walked beside a woman who had lost her husband and her 3 sons. One at Antioch, one in the desert, one in Jerusalem. She never spoke at all. Just walked. Her eyes empty. The journey back was worse than the journey there. We had no food. We had no purpose. We walked through lands we had devastated on the way south, and there was nothing left to take. We begged. We starved. We died. I thought as I walked about my wife and my boy. I wondered if they still lived. I wondered if they would know me. I was not the man who had left. My body was scarred and thin. My hair had gone gray. But it was more than that. Something inside me had died or been burned away. I wondered what I would tell them when they asked what I had done, what I had seen. Would I tell them about the blood? About the children? About the flesh eaten at Ma'ara? Would I tell them I had killed a boy for throwing a stone? Would I tell them I had walked 2,000 miles to escape Thomas's ghost, only to create 1,000 more ghosts to haunt me? That I had murdered a man in anger and then murdered 100 more in God's name, thinking somehow the second would cancel the first? Would I tell them that I was more damned now than when I left? I wondered if the forgiveness I had been promised was real, if God truly had washed me clean, or if I would carry this weight until I died and beyond. The priests had said Jerusalem would save us. They had said we would return as new men, reborn in Christ, pure as baptized infants. But I did not feel new. I felt ancient, as if I had lived 1,000 years in these months and years and seen the whole span of human wickedness compressed into a single terrible vision. I felt like I had seen the face of God, and it was not love but wrath. Not mercy but judgment. We crossed back through Anatolia, and men died of sickness. We crossed the sea and men drowned when a storm came up. We walked through lands where people threw stones at us, where they cursed us as devils and murderers. Maybe they were right. I reached home in winter, or what remained of it. My house was still standing. My wife was still alive. She was older, thinner, her hair gone white. My son was nearly a man, taller than me, his voice deep. They looked at me like I was a ghost. I tried to tell them where I had been. I opened my mouth and nothing came out. How could I explain? How could I make them understand? I had walked to the edge of the world and back. I had seen heaven and hell and could not tell them apart anymore. My wife held me that night and I wept. I wept like a child. She asked me what was wrong and I could not tell her. She asked if I was glad to be home and I did not know how to answer. The priest came to see me. The same priest who had first spoken of Jerusalem, though he looked older now, bent and tired. He asked if I had seen the holy city. I said yes. He asked if it was as beautiful as they said. I said yes. He asked if my sins had been forgiven. I thought of Thomas. I thought of his skull split open on the rock. I thought of all the men I had killed since. The boy with the stone. The man in Antioch with my spear in his belly. The others whose faces I could not even remember. I said yes. I lied. Thomas's wife still lived 3 houses down from mine. I saw her sometimes in the village. She had grown old and bent. Her son, the one who had stood at his father's grave. He looked at me sometimes with eyes that seemed to know. But how could he know? No one knew but God and me. And yet I felt known. I felt seen. The weight had not lifted. Jerusalem had not saved me. I had carried Thomas's death 2,000 miles and brought it back again, along with all the others. At night when I close my eyes, I see the city burning. I see faces I cannot name. I hear screaming that never stops. I see the boy with my spear in his chest. I see the streets running with blood. I see Christians eating the flesh of the dead. And I see Thomas. Always Thomas. Falling. His head striking the stone. The surprise in his eyes. I had thought Jerusalem would free me from him, that walking in Christ's footsteps would wash away his blood. But I see now that I was a murderer before I left, and I am a murderer still. Only now I have the blood of hundreds on my hands instead of one. I sought salvation and found only more damnation. The priests say this is the devil tormenting me. They say I must have more faith. They say I have been to the holiest place on earth. I have walked where Christ walked. I have been forgiven by God himself, and I must be grateful. I try to be grateful. I try to believe. But something is broken inside me that I do not think will mend. I look at my son and I wonder what I have given him. What kind of world? What kind of God? And still the priest speaks of Jerusalem. He says more crusades will come. He says the Saracens must be driven out forever. He says young men should take up the cross as I did. When he says this, I leave. I cannot bear to hear it. I cannot bear to think of other men walking that road, seeing what I saw, doing what I did. Jerusalem is behind me now, burning in my memory like a city made of light and ashes, holy and terrible. The place where I was promised salvation and found only blood. The place where I lost my soul and gained nothing in return. The place I will see every time I close my eyes until the day I die and possibly beyond. I went there to escape one murder and committed 100 more. I went there to find forgiveness and learned that some sins cannot be forgiven, no matter how far you walk, no matter how much blood you spill in God's name. Thomas is still dead. His skull is still broken. His wife is still a widow. His son is still fatherless. And I am still the man who killed him. Jerusalem changed nothing. God have mercy on me. God have mercy on us all. Though I do not think he will. I do not think he can forgive what we have done. What I have done. Not Thomas. Not Antioch. Not Jerusalem. Not any of it. I am damned. I knew it before I left and I know it now. The only difference is that now I have earned it.